to Ascending with Ashley. I'm Ashley. Welcome back for Daily Decolonizing. This is or not Daily Decolonizing, Decolonizing 101. This is our second class. And this class is all about additional notes. I don't know where those went, but this class is all about in order to be able to decolonize, we have to have a pretty solid understanding of what colonizing is, or colonization. Alright, so here it is. So we are going to talk about colonization, set the stage for us to be able to begin the process of decolonizing, okay? I do have my workbook up, but I wanted to share quick that in addition to this course workbook, I also have the Daily Decolonizing zine available for $10 if you want that. It is a prompt. We have also gone through that on this channel, both on the, I think it was on the Daily Decolonizing shorts. So you could just go to the Daily Decolonizing prompts, and then I did a second segment of going through the zine in order. Like the Daily Decolonizing shorts were pretty random, and then after that I went through them as they come in the zine. So it's up to you. It's only $10, but I did put it together using my own process, so I am charging for that. Not the workbook though. If you want the workbooks, whatever. Okay, now I'm getting to the right page for the workbook. Okay, so what is colonization? That is the question for this course, or for this class. And I'm going to read you what I have. I don't know if you can see that. No. Okay. Colonization is the action or process of settling among and establishing control over the indigenous people of an area. What we often hear as Third World and West are terms deemed by colonial powers. So we often hear terms like the West, right, referring to the United States and Europe, more colonial powers, and then there is a breakdown. So it's like you're either part of the West or you're a third world country, pretty much. I mean, that's how we've been indoctrinated into thinking about global relationships, I guess. If you're in the United States, at least, it's been very black and white thinking. Now, my notes, my additional notes I have that are not in the workbook. So my question here is, how can we determine colonial powers and the countries or indigenous folks? Colonial powers and countries / indigenous. And then I have instead of West and Third World, there's terminology called the Global North and the Global South. And there is a meme that's been circulating that shows this. It's an image of like all of Africa and South America being like dug up, and then like piles of riches in, it's like a cartoon, piles of riches in Europe, in the United States. I don't really talk a lot about Russia and Asia just because I have no idea. I have never studied that stuff. But I did look online when I was looking up colonial powers, and I think I break that down. Yeah, we break that down in the next slide, so we'll get there in a minute. But I wanted to just do a quick overview of some of the tactics and tendencies of colonization, and thinking of it within this context of global north, so including Europe and the United States specifically. Clearly, Israel is also included in that. So above the equator are more colonial powers versus the global south, which is more of the oppressed or indigenous, right? And when we think about, I mean, scope-wise, if we think about race, like the color of your skin, paler-skinned people or white people come from colder regions, northern regions, whereas darker skinned folks are closer to the equator. And I don't think, I mean, we definitely aren't taught that in school. We don't talk about race like that, especially here in the United States, obviously. But that is fact. So it's pretty, I think it's becoming pretty apparent within our collective consciousness that white folks are predominantly the colonizers of brown and black folks' skin, right? Those are indigenous folks. White people could have stayed where they were, right? And that's Europe, but European monarchs have a big part in colonizing the world, including funding Christopher Columbus and things like that, right? So, I mean, okay. But colonization, again, let's just revisit the definition. The action or process of settling among and establishing control over the indigenous people of an area, okay? Some of the tactics and tendencies of colonization are military presence, use of religion, trade, slavery, food, entertainment, distraction, control of the narrative, medical violence, war, genocide, obviously. Those aren't on my list, but military presence, I should put those on the list. Anyway, what are other means that you've seen? So think about that. You can write it down if you want. I mean, this is an online YouTube class, so you don't have to do that. But think about it if you're just now starting to think about colonization in these ways. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit of historical examples. I got all this information from Google. So you can fact check me by also writing who are colonial or historical colonial powers or whatever. Spain and Portugal were the first European maritime powers to establish colonies, particularly in the Americas, starting in the 15th century. Great Britain developed the largest empire with colonial across North America, Africa, Asia, and Oceanasia. What the fuck is Oceanasia? Is that like the Philippines? Are those the islands of... Anyway, I'll have to look that up. France built a large colonial empire with possessions in North America, Africa, and Asia. Like Canada, I'm pretty sure is pretty much initiated by France, because don't they speak French? Don't you speak French in Canada? The Netherlands had a significant colonial presence, especially in Southeast Asia and the Americas. So the Americas isn't just North America, it's like South America, Canada, United States, obviously, all of the Americas, okay? We're considered one continent, aren't we? I don't know. Because aren't we connected? Or maybe not. Maybe South and North are different. I don't know. Anyway, my geography is lacking right now. Belgium was a colonial power, most notably in the Congo. Man, a spacing issue. Germany developed a colonial empire in Africa and in the Pacific in the late 19th century. Russia expanded its territory eastward across Siberia and into Central Asia, and we're seeing this all today as well, okay? With the changing of the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, the insertion of military into the Panama. The United States is currently, this administration is trying to get a hold and control over the Panama Canal, because then they can control trade better. And that's exactly what Israel is also doing in Palestine and in the Middle East, is also trying to establish control over the trade routes. It's very important. That's how globalization, capitalism, and colonialism can be expanded, is if you have control of the trade. And I mean, right now here in the United States, it's coming out that, of course, Epstein and everything, so there's also that there's going to be more of an avenues for slavery and trafficking, drug trade, weapons, things like that, all the good stuff. Okay, that's sarcasm. Japan engaged in colonial expansion in East Asia, and the United States expanded its territory across North America and later acquired overseas territories. It's pretty vague, isn't it? Speaking of overseas territories of the United States, Israel. So these are current examples that we're seeing in this moment. Israel, the colonial project, is backed by the United States, and also what we're seeing in Sudan with the United Arab Emirates extracting gold for their own gain while killing the folks. We're seeing it in Congo as well with the forced slave labor of the indigenous folks to Congo to mine cobalt for our smart technology. Buy your shit refurbished if you possibly can. So okay, we have one more slide to go over, but really quick, I want to break this down to you with numbers for the countries. There are 195 countries, recognized countries, at like a NATO scale. No, United Nations. So there's 193 countries of the United Nations out of that 195. The only two exceptions, which is completely fascinating, is Palestine and the Vatican. That's fascinating. That is super fucking fascinating. I haven't quite made the link there in my own thinking. But it's clearly religious, obviously. Palestine is the birthplace of the Christian Savior, Jesus Christ, as he was a human. And the Vatican is its own entity. Kind of like Washington, D.C., if you're in the United States. Kind of thinking about how, like, D.C. is located in, Virginia or something, but it's like its own little moment. So it's really interesting that they're both, obviously Palestine, Israel is trying to change that, trying to, wipe them off the map. So it's interesting that these are the only two exceptions, right? Because the past few years when we've been seeing all of this, the countries coming together to vote on a ceasefire agreement or whatever, at these United Nations, we've been seeing these big lists of who's voting for it and who's voting against it, and United States and Israel obviously continue to vote against a ceasefire because it's in their best interest to have that land and the resources that land holds, which mostly is the $5 billion or so worth of oil that Gaza has on their ocean front. So anyway, what's really interesting about this is also that there are different counts. Okay, so the 195 is pretty recognized as the number of countries. However, there's more. The International Olympic Committee recognizes 206 countries, which is interesting. And that probably doesn't include the Vatican. That's a funny joke. Anyway, the CIA has their own count, and this is even more fascinating. The CIA's recognition of countries is 237, and then I put LOL. So, if we're thinking about the definition of colonization being the settling and establishing amongst an indigenous group or land of indigenous people, and the CIA recognizes 237 countries, then that has to include that one tribe that's super, the only people that haven't been colonized. I don't remember what they're called. But people have traveled there and then been killed because they are not going to be colonized. They are no, leave us alone. So I feel like that's one of the countries that the CIA is considering a country. I don't work for the CIA. They would probably benefit from me, but I would never sell out. But anyway, I think that's really fascinating. So I wanted to tell you, and you can fact check that. I got that directly from the United States website or government. history.state.gov/countries/all, and you will get that same count. That's where I got that info. But I think that's really interesting because the CIA's main job is to remove any issues with any sort of resistance to colonization, colonial powers. So the fact that they recognize a good, 195, 237, I'm really bad at math, 742, an extra 42 countries. I think that's interesting. My math might be off. I did that in my head. I'm not very good at math. But anyway, moving on. I just wanted you to have the numbers because when we're thinking about the global north and the global south, and we're thinking about the way that colonization is expanding and we're watching it, we're experiencing this in real time, right? It's not just in our history books. This is the first time that humanity has, it's the first time to our knowledge that humanity has had access to this amount of information at this real-time ability. It's the first time that we've been able to communicate, have parasocial relationships with each other. And so the colonial powers are threatened by that because we can share information without having to go to them. They do not control the narrative in this time, and that's what gives us, people who are fighting for liberation, people who want people to have human rights, people who are against colonial powers, the violence that ensues, right? People who want to bring back the matriarch. I mean, people who really have dreams of a better world and are doing the work to make sure that happens. People who are recognizing that they are a part of the change. That's what this is all about. But in order for us to get to that point, we really have to understand what it is that we are removing ourselves from, okay? And as we all live in these systems, we become a part of how they work, right? That Pink Floyd song, Welcome to the Machine. Everything has a way to work. Everything has a benefit to the colonizer, to the capitalists, and we all have to blindly participate in that until we become awake, until we become conscious of who we are, the world around us, and the way that we participate, right? And then we make those conscious decisions through decolonizing, through removing ourselves to the best of our ability, okay? So let's get to, how am I involved in colonization is the next slide, and then I'm going to be done for today, and we will pick up next week, and we will dive directly into the decolonizing process, okay? This is pretty wordy. So again, if you would like a copy of the workbook or a copy of the zine, just email me and we'll hook it up, okay? All right. If you'd like to give a donation, my Cash App is #ascendingwithashleigh, okay? All right. That's not necessary, but the energy exchange is right on, okay? While it is unlikely that you are single-handedly involved in colonization, I mean, there are plenty of people who are, right, actively participating in genocide. We're seeing that on our phones, right? So there are, but I feel like if you're on my channel, you're probably not one of those people, unless you're here to troll, in which case you're a douche. Okay. There are things that we participate in daily that do lead to others' oppression and removal from their land and extraction of their country's materials for capital gain. A few current examples of this are continuing to go to Starbucks or McDonald's even though you know that they are directly funding a genocide of the Palestinians with their financial support for Israel. This also goes for many companies and services that we use every day, right? People have been calling for boycotts because of this to help cut the funding of the weapons being used to kill millions of innocent civilians. Another example we are currently learning about is the extraction of cobalt in Congo and the humanitarian crisis it's causing. In addition to the displacement and slave labor of children, the extraction of cobalt is used in our smartphone and green technology like solar panels. So there's like this big push for green technology without the acknowledgement of the human sacrifice right? So then it puts people who have enough privilege to participate in green technology, it makes them think that they're doing the right thing when how that was created is usually, swept under the rug or completely covered up, right? But again, because we have access to each other, we can see these truths. If you want to check out some of, my Instagram is Ascending with Ashley, just like over here, and I always post, I use my Instagram for global information, but one particular, what is his name? Why am I not remembering his name? Ooh, it's right here. Pappy Orion. Pappy Orion. He is in Congo on the ground, and he's sharing a lot of information about that. So you can follow him. I'm connected with a lot of people in Gaza. If you would like firsthand accounts there as well, go over to my Instagram and check it out. Okay. Elon Musk has single-handedly gotten very rich. It's just announced like a week ago, as I was typing this actually, that he's going to be like the first declared trillionaire. I mean, that's just excessive and ridiculous. Like, people like us who have small bank accounts, even if you have like a trust or an estate, I mean, you have nowhere near that much money, right? Like, even if you're comfortable and you're privileged and you know you can travel, I don't think we can really fathom how much $1 trillion is. It's a ridiculous amount of money, and we need to remember that money is man-made, right? It's not real in the sense that, I mean, it's very real for the context in which we're speaking, because it's one of those first tactics that colonizers used, was introducing money to indigenous people who didn't need money. So with that acknowledgement, a trillionaire, it's the game Monopoly, okay? But like, it's real life, and there are very real consequences, obviously. But if you can allow yourself to think of the powers that be, instead of intimidated and fearful, think of it as ridiculous, right? Like that ridiculoso from Harry Potter, when they were like talking about the things that they were afraid of and they were changing it into something funny. Think about this as that, if that's helping you grasp your involvement in it, right? Like, I didn't sign up to have to pay to wipe my ass, right? Or I didn't sign up to have to, you know, there's plenty of people who have come and gone in history who have had the knowledge of how to make things free, and there are plenty of us alive on this planet right now. Hemp, for instance, would be incredible. The first person to introduce cutting down trees and making them into paper was, of course, a white man from like Europe. I don't remember his name, but like, right? So these are all tactics of colonization. Instead of cutting trees, we could grow hemp. Hemp grows very quickly. It's very beneficial. It's a fiber that can be used for paper and fabric, and it's sustainable, and you can also get medicine from it, right? We all love that. So it's like, there could be different ways. And we, as we are alive on this planet at this time, in addition to the spiritual warfare, there's very real tangible things that we can all be doing to be combating this, right? So that's another part of why this is important. Anyway, he got very rich by using slave labor of indigenous folks in the Congo and the use of cobalt in the satellites and other smart technology. There is a very fine line of consumerism and direct support and compliance for colonization at a global scale. We've been very conditioned by design to participate without question. The practice of decolonizing is being aware and making better choices for the betterment of all involved, not just ourselves. Okay? And then next week we'll start with what is decolonizing. Yeah. I think we'll do what is decolonizing, and then I'll go through some of the world prompts from the Decolonizing zine. And we can go over those together. Again, the point of this isn't to make you feel bad or guilty. It's to support you in coming into consciousness. There's a lot of guilt associated with that, like your own guilt. And so when we know better, we do better, right? And so when we have the knowledge that we're part of the problem and we are the only things that we can control, well, then we can make changes so that we're not so much a part of the problem, so that we can be a part of the solution, right? We can be that change that we want to see. And then we know that that has a ripple effect when we carry ourselves differently or make different decisions or even just have conversations. We're constantly planting seeds in the minds of others, right? So decolonizing is not, it's not a, I'm gonna do this a couple times and I'm good, right? It's a lifestyle change. This is a shift in your perspective, and therefore your choices as a human alive in these times. You're either good or evil at this point. It's pretty obvious. And if you're going to refuse to take accountability, even though you know you're doing wrong, then you're choosing ignorance, and ignorance is part of evil. That's one of the reasons I had to let my mom go. My mom wants to choose ignorance. She wants to be comfortable enough in her own privilege to not have to care. And I couldn't, we didn't really have anything to talk about anymore, because I can't keep talking about that. I can't talk about, I want people around me who are aware of the world and aware of their own impact. And I've always wanted people like that around me, which is why I'm usually alone. But yeah, understand how it works, and look into it a little bit. And I feel like it's just so apparent right now, again, with hashtags, with our ability to see things, with the saturation of information at this point in time, the global revolutions that are happening, the uprisings, the pushback, the we're in the age of Aquarius at a spiritual level, and that is about removing the veil. That is about the truth coming to the surface. I always think of the end of 40-Year-Old Virgin when I think of the age of Aquarius. You remember that part when they're all singing? But that is, we're in this moment. And I do truly believe that, as we're living through these prophetic times, I mean, religious texts that have been around for hundreds of years, if not thousands, are speaking to what we're experiencing. And yes, those were written by humans. But I want you to understand that this is so much larger than just, I'm going to start recycling and I'm good. I'm going to take a quick shower and I'm good, right? Like, those are the solutions that have been offered to us for, especially if you're millennial. We've been hearing that, like, take shorter showers. I remember this one time I was at UCLA in LA, and I was in the bathroom and they had this little thing about, it was like, I think it was about the lunch trays or something. I don't know. It was something about conserving water. And then meanwhile, you go outside and all of the fucking grass is green, right? And that reminds me of a Cinderella story with Hilary Duff. And what's her name? Jennifer, the woman from Legally Blonde. I don't remember her name. Coolidge? Is that her name? Maybe not. Maybe that's a chick with brown hair. Anyway, I don't know. But there's that scene where she's like, we're in a drought, and they're the only green lawn. So I was just like I rolled my eyes. So, like, when you start to decolonize, that's when you start to notice these things. And you're like, how ridiculous of you to tell me to turn the water off, like, when I'm brushing my teeth or whatever, and then have, like, golf course grass all over campus. I mean, UCLA is huge. It is a huge school. So it's a form of violence, and I think that's part of decolonizing too, that I didn't put in this course, and I probably should. That would actually be a really good thing, but we'll just talk about it right now, because I didn't put it in. But when I was in my master's program, I had to write a paper, and it was the only paper I got it was the one that brought down my GPA, but it was me having to conceptualize that violence is okay, right? And I think that's been a huge part of our conversation around resistance, around Second Amendment rights. There's this weird cognitive dissonance, and we're going to talk about that in like 2 weeks. But there's this weird disconnect where people aren't able to think of resistance against government or colonial powers or evil as a viable option, and we only think of violence from individuals, right? So there's this individuality of violence within this context, and that's another reason that these people get power and stay in power, right? So think about like enslaved people trying to run away or uprising or whatever. We don't hear those stories because they don't want to plant those seeds in us to know that that's a possibility, that's an option. And when resistance is happening, like the Israeli propaganda on YouTube has really kicked up in the past few weeks. I keep getting commercials about how Hamas needs to be stopped, right? And it's just this idea of resistance being violent, but genocide not, right? Like, it's so fucking ass backwards. And so these are the things that we start to notice, and we start to allow ourselves to inform our different reactions to things, and that's part of decolonizing. When you can recognize who the bad guys are, and also that you've willingly participated in that, mostly unknowingly, hopefully, there was a lot of ease. Anyway, it changes you. Again, this is a lifestyle change. This is not just I'm going to do a couple things and I'm gonna be good, right? And this isn't about salvation either. It's about being in the physical, making very real changes and acknowledgments for other people. It's your ability to humanize versus dehumanize, which dehumanization is a tool of the colonizers, right? So I hope this helps. This was exciting. I'm really glad I remembered it was Tuesday. I think that's when I recorded last week. I don't know. I'm also currently, I just finished the mental health and wellness class. So I'm also doing that. I think I'm doing that on Fridays, just when it feels like there's been enough space in between. I don't like to feel unfree. So if you'd like to see that, I'm going to be posting that. And I'm going to let you guys go, and I'm going to do a couple readings, because it's only 8 o'clock and I have time. Have a good one.